All right, guys, so this is going to be part 2 on Metaplex. If you watched the first video, we basically took an introductory look. We set up some kind of shallow calls into Metaplex. We didn't actually save an image file. It was pretty bare bones just to get started. So in this video, we're going to flesh everything out. We're going to actually save a real image file along with the NFT, try and retrieve it, make sure that all of the pieces, the JSON file with the metadata, the related image file, stuff like that is all coming back. And so that's what we're going to do. Now, before we get started, I already mentioned that the application is built on Tori and Vite. So the UI portion is built with the Vite build packaging and build system. So the testing is also using Vitest. So the guys who built the Vite build system also built their own test runner. So optionally, although normally a Vitest, because it's integrated into their whole ecosystem, can just run off of the settings in the vite.config file. If you want to make changes, so for example, if you want to run not in Node, but you want to run in a browser environment, then you have to enable these two settings in your vitest.config file, and it will override whatever you have in the root vite.config file. So in my case, I'm only increasing the timeouts because I'm finding that in the dev environment, Solana can be a bit slow. So I had to do that, but I'm going to be running in Node mode, so the other stuff I didn't need. So then if we continue, I think you will remember that we had a separate file for doing the actual uploading into Bundler because we had some issues with the node polyfills and stuff like that. You might want to take a look at the first video if you're curious as to what that stuff was about. But basically, in that first video, this used to be an interface and not an abstract class. The only difference between an interface and an abstract class is an interface is just basically definitions without implementations, but an abstract class can have either or both. So in order to get back the JSON files and the image files in a generic way, so in other words, right now we're using Bundler as the data store backend, but of course we could use anything we wanted, IPFS, centralized database, whatever. So in order to guard against those possible the possibility of changing the back end, I have these kind of generic functions that just take a URL and give back the relevant data based upon fetch calls. So in other words, I've not tied this with Arweave API calls or anything like that because I want to keep it platform agnostic. And so I have a separate function for getting the JSON files and another one for getting image files. And of course, I could have left the interface alone and created maybe a different class or whatever. But having this allows me to keep things simpler and have my root bundler data service class just inherit from that abstract class and get those implemented functions along with implementing its own upload NFT file function. So that's one thing that I want to show you, but this function remains identical from the first video, so there's no changes there. Now, in order to flesh out the call, like I said, make it a realistic call that includes a more filled out JSON file that points to the actual image file, and then of course having the image file uploaded as well. I've made some changes to this Metaplex NFT service that we had initially. So amongst those changes, I made the interface that the implementation is inheriting from. And again, I don't necessarily know that the future is going to be always Solana and Metaplex. I mean, more than likely it will be, but if I need to change, I just want to hide everything behind an interface. But in this case, I might be returning different types from my functions. So I'm adding generics in here. And also because the implementations could be on a different blockchain, a different implementation, etc., I did not want to have a specific type that I create in here somewhere that is specific to Solana or specific to some particular blockchain. So that's why I made this generic. And then in here, in my inherited implementation, I'm giving the specific type that I want to use. So going past that, what I decided is that the whole activity of uploading the JSON file, uploading the content file, the image file, whatever it is, could be refactored into its own function and thereby reused in different posting or messaging calls. So that function is here, and all it's doing is it initializes the JSON object. And again, from the first video, the JSON object is what points to the actual image assets and relevant information. In my case, in addition to kind of the typical stuff that would be in here, I also decided to put the actual dchat message text as one of the properties in the JSON file, which you are free to do for customization purposes. And then after that, it determines if a file is being desired to be uploaded. Obviously, an NFT could possibly be text only. But if there is, then that NFT will be, that file related to the NFT will be uploaded first. And then the image property of the JSON will be instantiated. And then this is going to be just a URL. In this case, it's going to be to Arweave with the transaction ID, and then in this case, the extension of the image file. And then this gets converted into a string because it's supposed to be put up as JSON. So then that data is uploaded as a JSON string. So then the other part is pretty much identical. I did some minor cleanup, and then I just wanted, for testing purposes, I wanted the URL out as a separate property so I can check it later. And then I'm returning the entire object. Again, that would be of this type, create NFT response. And then in there, I have these properties. This, of course, right here is the NFT itself. And this one is pretty important because this is, since it's an NFT, there's only one actual token instance ever going to be in here. So you can get pretty much everything as long as you have this, but the entire NFT data is here regardless. So after that, what I decided to do is to make this more realistic and kind of not only generate an NFT that has the JSON file, the image file, all that stuff, but I wanted to verify that it actually gets in there with all of the appropriate data properly checked. So therefore, I'm doing a integration test. As I said before, this is running on the Vitest runner. It's not running Jest, just to be clear. It's running Vitest, their own testing system in their Vite ecosystem. But it's not a big deal. If you look at the NPM package, pretty much all the expected stuff is in here. Describe, expect, it. You just have to, import it explicitly, unlike Jest. So then once I did that, like I said, I didn't want to run in the browser environment. I wanted to run in the Node environment. So therefore, I'm making some import calls to Node. And then the rest of it is, either my stuff or Solana, including the where is it? Okay, the Metaplex stuff is actually in my code. So in here, I wanted to instantiate kind of the stuff that is going to be reused throughout the app, the testing. So you have the connection itself. You have a testing wallet. I decided to put that inside of fixtures right here. You have the instantiation of the JSON file of the wallet and then the key pair. So this is probably going to be used throughout, in multiple tests. So I just put it out here. I didn't want to do the before all because it's not necessary. And then if you do that, then you have to instantiate these as empty, lets instead. And I didn't want to do that because it's not needed and it gets really messy. So in here, I created a new function just to make sure that I have enough funds here. Because, every now and then you run out of funds and you get weird errors and then you're not sure why. So you end up checking in other places. So I just wanted to preempt that right here. So then we instantiate our bundler data service so that we can pass it to the Metaplex NFT service. After that, we're going to get the actual image itself. It's right here inside of the fixtures. So we're going to get that and we're going to use it later. I pre-initialize a username because I'm using it a couple of different times. And then we run our actual isolated message. Isolated message just means that it's not a response or a retweet or anything like that. It's just, a standalone message. So I have some fake data in here, and then there's our image file itself. And then, of course, our first assertion, we just want to make sure that the real path to the JSON URL is being set into the NFT data. And then once we verify that, assuming that works, then we're going to use the global getter functions. So the first one is to check the NFT to make sure that it's actually there. And then after that, we convert it into that type so that we can check some of the properties inside of it. And then we verify that the username is set properly. The timestamp that is here, I'm not bothering testing. There's like a timestamp thing in here. Because, it's not that big of a deal. And then I didn't want to spy inside of that because this is an integration test. But anyway, assuming that works, then we are downloading the actual image file in preparation to test it out. And then the way that I'm doing a comparison on an image file is I'm converting it to a base 64 string, as well as the original image file itself. And then I do an assertion on that being equal. So if we run the test, which can be a little bit slow, but I'll speed it up. All right, so as you can see, all the assertions passed, the test passed. So yeah, that's it. So this is, I know it's isolated and it's a small chunk of all the possible activities that you might do with Metaplex, but this is like a complete realistic creation of an NFT with the associated JSON, with the associated image file. So you can use this as a base for your own projects and just kind of grow it out to customize for your needs. So that's basically it. Look out for my next Actix web video. I'm actually going to switch from Redis to something called SurrealDB. It's pretty cool. Thanks.